Hey friends, welcome back to Artists of the Way. I'm John, the host, and on this episode, we have a special guest that I'm super excited about. We are bringing on Spencer Milford, who is the lead actor in the Lord of the Rings musical, playing Frodo Baggins. They just recently closed in Chicago. They're going to be doing a tour in New Zealand in October. I was told about this show through a friend of mine. I'd known about the musical in the past and never thought I'd get a chance to see it. And then they revived it in England and brought it to the States in Chicago. So I was super excited to see it. My wife and I hit it up on our vacation. It was a real blast. I managed to get a hold of Spencer, and he was incredibly gracious and willing to come onto the podcast and chat a little bit. And I'm so grateful to him for that. We're going to chat about a bunch of things, talk about some of his experience as an actor and as a producer, the projects that he's proud of and enjoys doing, and then what his experience has been like in Lord of the Rings, what it's been like playing this remarkable role that means so much to people, how that role's impacted him, and also how his faith has impacted his approach to the show, how we can see that Christian faith that was, of course, in Tolkien's writing, his worldview, how that comes through in the story and in their adaptation. I had a really wonderful time chatting with Spencer. It was a wonderful discussion, and I'm excited to share it with you guys. Thanks for joining us. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. Back at home in St. Louis and just enjoying some downtime before heading off to New Zealand.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you closed last weekend, correct? Was when you guys closed?
Yes.
Okay.
Last Sunday.
Okay. How long before you guys end up heading out to tour New Zealand?
We have a little bit. I think my flight leaves Chicago on October 26th.
Okay.
So I've got a little bit of downtime. It's a little bit too much downtime, but it's good. I love being at home, so it's been nice to get a break for sure.
For sure. Yeah. Have you been to New Zealand before? Because that just sounds like the dream.
No, I've never been south of the equator, so it's gonna be amazing. And I mean, just from watching the Lord of the Rings movies, I already know that it's a beautiful country. So, and I've just heard great things about the food, the people, just the culture. I'm pumped.
Totally. Is your whole cast able to go down, or did you guys have to shuffle anything, or did you all kind of sign on with the idea of we're all committing to both this and a tour in New Zealand?
We signed our contracts in Chicago just for Chicago. We didn't know.
Okay.
There were like rumblings when we were auditioning that they were planning on taking it to New Zealand, but there was nothing like firm. But then we finished our first read through and sing through of the show after about a week of rehearsals, because we spent that first week. There's so much music, so we spent the first week like really focusing on the music and doing a little bit of scene work as well. But we had our first like full read through, sing through with the cast a weekend, and after the read through, our director Paul Hart, who's amazing and super. He's a very stoic man, but this was the first time we saw his like vulnerable side, and he was kind of in tears saying how great the read through went and how he wants to take us all. He wants us all to go to New Zealand with the show next, and that he said we want to take all of you. So it was really cool to finish our first read through together, and everyone's a mess emotionally from the end of the show, and then to get that good news was really sweet and special. So we've been looking forward to this since, that rehearsal was in June. So we've kind of been keeping it under wraps for a little bit, but
That's going to be so cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, I will jump into, I have a couple questions I ask everybody.
Cool.
So first, I want to know, how is God using art in your life right now? Either stuff you're making or stuff that you're engaging with as an audience member or, listener or reader and so on.
I mean, God's using art in my life in a pretty big way with this show. Number one, the fact that Tolkien was such a devout Christian, and and hearing stories of him sharing his faith with C.S. Lewis, and all the great work that came through that friendship, and it's just been really special with this show in particular, because I after the show is over, it takes so much emotional, mental, physical stamina just to get through it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the night, I'm just kind of, my voice is shot, my body's tired. I'm just kind of like, I want to, yeah, not really talk to anyone, but then coming out, no, and it's being real, and then
Yeah.
coming out into the audience or coming out into the lobby and meeting with audience members who are just like
Hmm.
so deeply moved by it. Um, it's taught me to remember that like God gave me these gifts, and so
Mm.
I'm just remembered to be constantly grateful for every opportunity to perform and just the impact
Yeah.
that it's had on people's lives. Um, I talked to this woman who she is a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and she has a daughter who's 5, and she was telling me how she lost her son when he was
Mm.
only 3 years old, and so she uses Lord of the Rings whenever she's feeling discouraged or remembers how sad she is about her son not being with her anymore, and she reads like
Right.
little passages of either The Hobbit or the Lord of the Rings to her daughter, and it like it really lifts her spirit. And um, yeah, I mean, you just don't think about those things when you're
Yeah.
performing, how like what you're doing can impact other people. And so
Hmm.
God has just really blessed me with this role. I didn't think at the beginning of this year, I didn't know that the Lord of the Rings musical was a thing. I didn't
Yeah.
know about it at all. I had no intentions of auditioning for it until I heard about
Hmm.
it in March. And um, it's such a hard business in general, and so you
Hmm.
constantly pray for opportunities and pray that like the right things will come your way, and
Yeah.
when it comes to fruition, I don't take it lightly. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm grateful for this role, and grateful that God has like blessed me with such a great company of people to work with, and
Hmm.
an amazing fan base to reach out to and connect with.
Yeah. That's amazing. You do have a remarkable cast. It was some just breathtaking performances.
Yeah,
Is
thanks.
that like when you're like going out there, is it kind of an every night thing where you're like you have to like remind yourself this is going to be a good thing to engage with these audience members, or are
Yeah.
there times where it's like this is a little more rejuvenating, or is it always that like no, I should do this, this will be good, and then you go out there and it is.
Yeah. I think the only times where it feels like work is on after the first show on a 2 show day, because there's
Mm.
only like a certain amount of downtime I have before I
Yep.
have to like warm up again for the next one.
Yep.
So I'm like, oh, I gotta get out there and like and get some food and like and drink some tea, and then I gotta stretch again, and I only have a certain amount
Yep.
of time to do that, and then depending on how many people like want to talk or take pictures or
Right.
have me sign something. Yeah, that can be, I guess, yeah, just I don't know, um, time consuming and energy consuming. But I
Yep.
mean, yeah, it doesn't. I don't take it lightly that like there's so many people who would kill to play this part, and
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I'm never like these fans like all this stupid stuff, but
Right.
um, yeah, I mean it's never. I think just on 2 show days is when I'm like I wish this could go quicker, you know.
Yeah. Just do like point 0.5 speed on everybody's talking and then
Yeah. But like
yep.
after it is such a feat to get through it every night that like
Yeah.
after the show and after I'm done, it is. It's kind of like a relief to go out and get to take pictures of people
For
and
sure.
just and talk with people. It's awesome.
Yeah. That's great. Outside of Lord of the Rings, is there anything that you're working on right now that you can talk about or would want to share?
Yeah. So I run a small production company with a couple friends of mine here in St. Louis. We're
Cool.
called River Rat Productions, and
Okay.
we've made a few short films and a couple music videos, and we had a play that we premiered at the St. Louis Fringe Festival, that we're still working on actually turning it into a feature film, which is exciting.
Hmm.
But
Nice.
right now we're about to shoot a couple of sizzle reels for a web series that a friend of mine, Sam Rozier, wrote called Squires, and it's
Okay.
about the squires of the Knights of the Round Table. So Lancelot, King Arthur, Galahad, and the gang, they all get taken by this dark force, and they vanish from Camelot. And their squires are the ones that have to go and save them. And
Nice.
they're young and ill-equipped and uh, kind of buffoons. So
Yeah.
it's a bit of a coming of age and adventure story. So
That sounds
I'm
super awesome.
staying in the fantasy realm, which is fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool. That sounds fun. I'll have to keep an eye
yeah,
out for that.
yeah.
Sweet. So let's wind it back. I'd love to know, how did you first get into theater and acting? What was it that first made you interested in it, and what was your the first way you kind of broke in?
Yeah, through God, actually, through church. So my family went to the First Church of God up in North County in St. Louis when I was growing
Okay.
up. Um, and yeah, my parents were super active in the church. My mom's a kindergarten teacher, so
Okay.
my parents ran the like Sunday school for like little kids back in the day, and so um, yeah, I spent a lot of time at church growing up, and I would have to go to my brothers are 4 and 6 years older than me, and
Mm.
so we would have to go to their rehearsals for like the Christmas musical that they were putting on,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I was too young to be in it at the time, but I was watching the rehearsals, and I learned all the songs and learned all the little dance steps and like learned everybody's lines. I think I was like 3 or 4 years old,
Yeah.
and the music director at church was like, I think I was like 3 or 4, and she saw that I knew everything already just from watching it and having to be there every night. So
Yeah.
she invited me to be in the Christmas musical, and yeah, the rest was kind of history. The year after that, they did the same, story of Jesus's birth, and
Yeah.
my brothers and I were the three wise men. And when it
Nice.
came time for the performance, my brothers decided that they didn't want to say any other lines. So they were just like, "Well, you're gonna be all three of them then, and we're just gonna stand there." And I was like, "Okay." Yeah, so I was Frankenstein's Gold and Myrrh. That was my
Nice.
starring turn, and I think that's when I realized that I liked the attention. So yeah, yeah, and that's kind of how I got my start. And then there's a community theater in my town that did musical or like youth productions of musicals. So I did a
Hmm.
production of my first musical outside of church was Little Shop of Horrors when I was 5 or 6. Yeah, I was the
Big
first
vibe change.
customer. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was wild. It was very wild. I was the first customer who sees the plant in the window, so that
Oh,
was
nice.
yeah. I'll grateful for that. Shrewsbury Community Theater for anyone who's knows St. Louis. It's
Yeah.
a lot of I performed with a lot of people there who I still am in touch with now. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a big part of my career growing up, and then
Hmm.
yeah, I just kept doing community theater, and then eventually auditioned for the Muni, which is this massive 11,000 seat outdoor theater here in St. Louis. It's the biggest and
Nice.
oldest theater in North America, and I spent my childhood and my teenage years performing there, and that's where I kind of
Nice.
fell in love with it and realized that it
Yeah.
was kind of what I wanted to do as a profession.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
That's awesome. What are the things that continue to inspire you as an artist? Like, are there major, like, I don't know if there's like themes or things you're passionate about, or is it kind of a new thing in different seasons?
Yeah, I mean, the things that really inspire me are, I guess, things that, well, there's two different sides. So, like, I like to produce stuff too. So, I like,
Right.
yeah, stories about hope and stories about just
Mm.
human connection and friendship, but things that like push the boundaries of that.
Yeah.
So things that challenge us as society, and things that kind of hold up a mirror to society and show our flaws, but also like the beauty that humanity can bring. So
Hmm.
um, yeah, I guess that's kind of a vague answer, but I just anything that there's no like one genre or one thing that I'm
Right.
interested in. So it's
Hmm.
really, it comes down to like the script and the storytelling and the writing. I like to be a part of things that push me in different directions. I'm always playing English roles and like British roles. So
Uh-huh.
I do a lot of accents. So I like things that use accent work.
Yeah.
So that stuff excites me. But yeah, I mean, there's a variety of things that inspire me. I also like working with new writers. So anyone
Mm.
who's like just starting out, like playwriting or writing musicals, I like developing stuff from the ground floor with people, which is
Yeah.
what me and my group of friends here do. That we really like to develop things from the ground up and work with
Yeah.
artists and really collaborate. And yeah, it's great. I love working on all kinds of things.
Yeah. Do you have a project, I don't know, recently, or one that just like sticks out where it's like that was like a really exciting boundary pushing one that like confirmed that like I don't know, that passion for trying to like stretch the what's the word I'm trying to think of, the audience in, and like engage them in unique ways, or
Yeah.
like a ground up one where it was like, oh, this was so exciting and cool to see come to fruition that it kind of lit that and ignited that passion.
Yeah, there's this play I did, actually, the world premiere of this play called Buzz by Susan Ferrara. She's an amazing playwright out of New York, and she's a multi hyphenate. She just, acts, directs, writes, produces all sorts of stuff, and
Yeah.
she wrote this play called Buzz about the first woman to direct at the Royal Shakespeare Company. This woman
Oh.
named Marianne Goodbody, but they called her Buzz because I guess nowadays she probably would have been like diagnosed with ADHD, because apparently just
Mm.
her mind wouldn't stop and she buzzed around like a bee, and so they called her
Mm-hmm.
Buzz. And um, for the time, I think this was like 1970 or 1971 at Stratford at the Royal Shakespeare Company, and she was the only female director, and they wouldn't let her direct shows on the main stage. And so she said, well, if you're not going to let me direct on the main stage, I'm going to use whatever space I can. So she turned their scene shop and their costume shop into a performance space.
Huh.
And this was before people were really doing a lot of avant-garde theater,
Yeah.
especially in England. It was and
Right.
at the Royal Shakespeare Company, it was very rigid, old school Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Um, so she was kind of trying to push the boundaries there, and she had the audience sitting on sofas, and she was using like sheets from people's bedspreads as curtains, and she did a production of Hamlet with Ben Kingsley as Hamlet. And again,
Yeah.
this was Ben Kingsley was one of the only like people of color in the Royal Shakespeare Company at the time, and he was
Mm-hmm.
playing spear carrier number 3 in the back of every production, and didn't get a
Yeah.
chance to play the lead. And she gave him the chance to play Hamlet, and this production was groundbreaking, and it got rave reviews, and it
Yeah.
looked like her career was really about to pop off. And actually, 4 days after their opening night, she was found dead in her apartment.
Oh.
And yeah. So this play is about her life, and her life up until that point, and her production of Hamlet, and then her
Yeah.
death, and how it's very obscure as to what really happened to her, and if there was foul play
Mm-hmm.
involved, and they're not really sure. And the Royal Shakespeare
Yeah.
Company attempted to kind of cover it up, and
Yikes.
um, yeah, it's really, yeah, talk about challenging, because
Yeah.
it's what should be a really light or bright spot in their history has turned into this really sour thing. And so yeah, I got to be a part of the world premiere of that at Alabama Shakespeare Festival a few years ago, and we performed it in their scene shop. So we were driving trucks into the space and using like
Mm-hmm.
machinery, and
Wow.
using like big great lifts, and uh, yeah, it was really cool to be a part of a story about a woman who should be very well known in theater spaces, but she is
Yeah.
not well known at all. Like no one really knows her story. So yeah, I hope that gets another iteration. I really liked that play, and I hope another theater produces it soon in the future, I would love to be a part of it.
Yeah, that's really amazing. So, did you say she's the first female director the Royal Shakespeare Company ever had?
Yeah, Marianne Goodbuddy. Yeah, it was the 70s. I'm not quite sure what exact year, but I know it was, early
Right.
70s.
That just blows my mind for how
Yeah,
long
yeah.
Shakespeare's been around.
I know,
That's
it's wild.
crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, let's jump to Lord of the Rings a little bit again,
Sure.
and let's chat about Frodo. So, I'm just curious, what was like the experience of getting the role? So you said you didn't know the musical beforehand, or that it was out there.
No, I didn't know the musical. I had heard Now and For Always. I can't
Mm,
remember who played it. I think, I lived in New York for 6 years and hung out with a lot of
yeah.
theater people, and
Right.
everyone was always like, "Oh, listen to this obscure song from this random musical no one ever knows." And
Yep.
so I think someone played Now and For Always from the Lord of the Rings musical, and I remember hearing it for the first time and being like, "Wait, this song is amazing! And why isn't this music? Why how did this musical never make it to Broadway and all that stuff?"
Yep.
And uh, yeah, but besides that, I didn't know anything about it. And wait, what was the original question? Now I'm already
Yeah,
brain
I think I had it too.
blanking.
What was the experience then of you like finding out and
Oh
auditioning and
yeah,
getting that part and pursuing that and deciding to go out for it?
yeah. Well, it was very hush hush at the beginning. They were like, people are auditioning for this unnamed project that's going to be making its premiere at Chicago Shakes, and so usually when they're like, we can't tell you the name of it,
Hmm.
it's because it's like a massive thing with either like a big
Right.
director attached or a big, IP, like,
Hmm.
with Tolkien. And uh, yeah, so no one really knew what it was. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I want to audition for this. Yeah, any like big project and Chicago Shakespeare is one of the biggest, theaters in Chicago. So
Yeah.
I hadn't worked there yet, and I've only lived in Chicago for like 2.5 years. So
Hmm.
I was amped to be able to audition for them. Um, and then I got the sides, and it was like Lord of the Rings, Frodo, like very like
Hmm.
confidential. Don't read it. Well, actually, I'll go back. I actually was originally sent the sides for Sam,
Mm.
and I was like, oh, I was like, I don't really. And they wanted him to be a great guitar player, and I was like, I don't
Mm.
really. I play like four chords on the guitar, and it's not my.
Yep.
I'm more of a actor, singer, dancer, and not so much I don't play instruments for real. I play a little
Right.
bit of guitar. I'm getting better actually, but
Nice.
just from being inspired by my castmates who all of them play like seven different
That was
instruments. So
incredible.
yeah.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, so I talked to my agents back and forth about Sam, and I was like, I just don't think, I think Frodo's my part. I think I just resonate more with his determination, and I liked the arc a little bit better, and um,
Hmm.
his journey from being, someone that everyone admired in Hobbiton, and someone that his friends looked up to him and looked up to him to be a leader, and to see him fall and get taken over from this like really pure person to being totally overcome by evil is just a
Yeah.
really, I mean, it's you can't ask for a better like character arc.
Yeah.
And he has to rely on the help of his friends to get him through it.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's a part that I desperately wanted to play. So they ended up having me read for Frodo instead of Sam, which thank goodness, because I thought I made like a 10-minute long first audition tape where they said they didn't want to hear anyone sing, but they wanted to see somebody play an instrument. And so I
Okay.
was like, well, I don't really. I'm a really good tap dancer, so I'm good with
Hmm.
percussion. And I was like, I
Right.
can play a cajon. I can fake my way around a cajon. So I like,
Yeah.
did a couple little beats on a cajon, and that was like, this
Yep.
is me playing an instrument. Uh, but I wanted to nail the scene, so
Yeah.
I worked with my friend and mentor Patrick Mulvey, who's a Chicago actor and is amazing. He's been in a ton of different things, TV and film and Broadway, and
Hmm.
we did worked on the audition together, and I just felt really good about it. I had a really good feeling about it. Didn't
Hmm.
hear anything for like a month, And then got a call back in person where it was at Chicago Shakes, and I went in and I sat down, and when I got into the waiting room, there was only two other actors in there. One was reading for Legolas, and actually right when I got there and set my stuff down, they brought him into the room. And so then it was just me and one other guy, and it was Michael Kurowski, who ended up being our Sam. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like really nervous because I'm like, this is the biggest audition I've had this year and the biggest audition I've had in quite a while. So I was really nervous, and I wanted to go over the lines just to say them and not sit there with my thoughts. And so I asked Michael, I'd never met him before, and I was like, hey man, what do you happen to be reading for? And he said, oh, I'm in for Sam. And I said, well, that's perfect. I'm in for Frodo. Can we read this? They had the Sam Frodo scene at the top of the second act where they first get attacked by Gollum. So we started reading the scene together, and I was like, wait, this guy's pretty good. I would love for them to ask us to read together in the room. That would be amazing. They didn't ask us to read together, but I went in the room and I thought the audition went really well. It was on Zoom. So it was weird because I was in the room with the artistic director of Chicago Shakes and the casting director. And then Paul Hart, our director, was in England. So he was on Zoom on a TV screen. And then Mark Aspinall, who's the music supervisor, was also on Zoom. So it was my first time doing like a hybrid audition where I'm auditioning for people in the room, but I'm actually auditioning like the people who make more of the call as the director. Right. So he's on this TV screen, and it was weird. So I didn't really, I thought I did a good job, but I was like, well, I have no idea. I can't read. It's hard to read someone through a Zoom screen, especially when I'm trying to focus on my acting and not really what they're doing. So yeah, and then again, it took like another month, and I didn't hear anything, and I was kind of upset because I was like, man, I thought I was great for this role, and when you try not to get your hopes up, but sometimes there's a part that comes along and you really get your hopes up, and so I was in Scotland for a friend's wedding, and I went to Scotland for a week, and I was hiking in the Highlands with a friend of mine, and I was like really feeling, I was, thinking about Lord of the Rings and Frodo and Sam's journey, and as I'm hiking up this mountain, and I just remember praying like, oh Lord, like if it's meant to be, God, just please let this happen. Like thank you for the opportunity to even audition for it and everything that I've been so blessed in my life. And but I really, like, this role is just calling to me, God, like, please. And sure enough, when I got back from Scotland, the day after I got back, I got an email from my agent being like, you have a final callback for Lord of the Rings on Zoom, and it's tomorrow morning. And this was like, it was like 5 o'clock on a Wednesday night, and they were like, your final callback is on Zoom at 10 a.m. tomorrow. And I was like, oh, gosh. Which was crazy. I've never it's such a quick turnaround. So I got to Zoom at the house I was living in Chicago, and I remember I finished the audition, and my roommates were in their rooms, and as soon as I signed off the Zoom link, they opened up their doors and they were like, dude, you so got that. Like, you definitely got it. There's no way. There was like, there, you crushed that. There's no way they don't take you. And so then I got my hopes up again, and I was like, oh no, but if it doesn't happen, it's just not meant to be. But it was a great feeling when I got the call, I guess like a few days after that, but it was only 2 weeks before we started rehearsals. So they were cast. It took them a very long time to cast the show. And apparently there was guys reading for it in New York and guys up for it in London, and they said it was like an international search for Frodo. So I had to get approved by Middle Earth Enterprises, and there was it's just, but now I'm a part of this massive thing, and just so grateful. Like it's the role of a lifetime. It pushes me in all the right ways, and to be able to do it with this cast and to perform with Michael and Tony and Tom Amandas as Gandalf and just literally everyone in the company. It's just a beautiful cast, and I'm super lucky.
Yeah. What has been the most challenging thing about it as you've dived into the role?
Yeah, I think the most challenging thing for me is the vocal toll that it takes. It's a lot of screaming and a lot of dying, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
it's a long show.
it's 3 hours. It's 3 hours, and Frodo's the main character, so I talk. I talk quite a bit. And I do a lot of yelling, a lot of, once I get stabbed, there's a lot of screaming and a lot of being tense,
Yeah.
and I really try to, in the second act, as the ring is kind of taking over more and more, and he's in such a depressed and just fragile state, and he has that speech where he says, "I feel stretched somehow, rolled out so thinly, like you can see right through me." And that's probably the hardest speech I think to do every night, because it comes from such a vulnerable and just someone who's just torn apart physically and emotionally, and everything in him is telling him that he's a failure and he's not gonna be able to do it, and you can't do it, and your friends don't love you, and don't trust anybody, and like you need it for yourself, and all these things, and going to that like dark, just, I mean, frankly, evil place every night it was taxing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was probably the hardest part, was just like vocally getting there. It just every Sunday night and Monday it was kind of like limping across the finish line. But
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask, was there like any, because I've done roles before where it's like I'm delving into things in me that I know are like some of my deepest struggles or the darkest parts of me that I know I really struggle with. So in going to those places, was there anything that you felt like that carried over or that impacted you in your own life as you were walking through that as the character, or that maybe hit you in a new way with your relationship with God as you kind of dangled over into that dark edge with that character?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think well, at the end of the show, when Sam and Rosie get married, and Frodo, at least in our staging of it, he's not even looking at them when they get married, and he's kind of, and the very next line is, Frodo Baggins though is too often ill. And there was something about, I was actually supposed to be the best man in one of my best friend's weddings down in Georgia, and unfortunately I wasn't able to go because it conflicted with the opening weekend of our show.
Yeah.
And it was one of those tough things where it's like work or life, and work and friendships, and something I've struggled with my whole life as an actor is missing things because of being in a show. And so it just gutted me that I couldn't be the best man in my best friend's wedding. And here I was doing this show, and I remember the week of the wedding and the night of the wedding when I was missing it, and that line happened. I let myself, like Spencer, kind of. It was one of the scarier moments I've had on stage, where I kind of lost control a little bit, and it was like Spencer getting emotional and not Frodo getting emotional. I got it back in time, but there was like a scary moment where I was like crying a little uncontrollably, just from feeling sad and feeling alone and feeling like I'm letting down my friends, and like, how can I call myself someone's best friend if I'm not even going to show up for his wedding and stuff like that. And of course, my friend is amazing, and he was like, dude, I'm so proud of you. You're living your dream, and like we'll have many more chances to like spend time with each other, and I always love you, and I'm proud of you. And like, he was great, and he eventually was able to come and see the show, and so I got to connect with him and his wife, and just, I was super encouraged by just them understanding that they're also artists as well, so they kind of get the struggle. But that one was tough, that night of feeling like I'm truly letting my friends down, like I'm really I I wish I could be a better friend. And that
Mm-hmm.
was kind of tough to work through. But yeah, I kind of love when shows do that though, when they challenge you to
Mm-hmm.
really look at your own life. It's you have to constantly take stock of everything in your life because everything happens so quickly, and you got to be grateful for every moment. So that
Mm-hmm.
was a reminder to yeah, just to love your friends always.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
is lovely. I do feel like, I don't know if this is just because when you're working on something, that's where your brain is at and you're meditating on that. But I know for myself, if I look back through roles I've played or projects I've worked on, it very often feels like they've been arranged to match whatever season of life I'm in some
totally.
strange, random way. And it's just like, I do this, and then there's this completely different thing happening in life. And it's like, oh, look at how that worked out. God just set that up
Yeah,
perfectly for me to like work it
exactly.
through there or learn there. So that's awesome.
That's so cool.
What is it about the story of Lord of the Rings that like most resonates with you? Either like the books or this adaptation you guys have done or in the movies.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just at the core of it, it's that you have to rely on others, and
Mm.
you can't do it alone. Like you
Yeah.
physically cannot. And Tolkien has written such a gorgeous friendship between Sam and Frodo that they just never give up on each other, and even when
Hmm.
they want to give up separately, they don't. I guess when Frodo is literally can't go on anymore, his friend literally picks him up and carries him. It's just
Yeah.
such a beautiful story of like the truest form of love and
Hmm.
sacrifice. It's yeah, it's amazing. I just that's probably the biggest draw to it is just their friendship, and at the core of the story it yeah, it's inspiring.
Yeah. I definitely think that came through in your production. My wife and I have remarked several times about how we loved the way you guys played that, the dynamic that was set up between them, and the history
Oh,
that you could
thanks.
feel between them.
Yeah,
And like one of the moments just visually that I remember loving is right after, I think it's right after the Shelob encounter when you're getting up and the rest of the cast comes out and you have like this
yeah,
shadow like grabbing their hand and them helping you up.
yeah,
And
yeah,
just the idea of all the people in our lives and the people God has blessed us with that we rely on and that are like contribute to parts of ourselves carrying us through those difficult times. I just thought was painted
totally.
so beautifully there.
Yeah, I love that scene too, and it also it just reminds me that even though all of those people weren't actually there with Sam and Frodo on Mount Doom, obviously,
Hmm.
but they were all back home. They were all thinking of them and
Yeah.
worrying about them, and it just
Hmm.
reminds me like we're so as Christians, it's so amazing to know that even though if I'm not actually with someone, like that person's praying for me and that person's thinking of me,
Hmm.
and there's so many things that God has at work, and people in uh, like Him working through people that you don't even know, and like He's
Yeah.
working through you and affecting you in ways you don't even know. So.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's beautiful. That scene's great.
It was lovely. It like made me think of the idea of like the cloud of saints in Hebrews when it's like we're surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses.
Yeah.
And
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
it was so good. And like what you said of like people we don't even know and thinking about for Tolkien as a Catholic, like the importance of the saints in his faith
Uh
and all
huh.
these people that came before us too. Yeah, anyways, I
Yeah.
could geek out about that for a while.
No,
But
it's totally. I love it. Love it. I love it.
it's so good. How how do you think your faith influenced the way you approached the role? Or the things that maybe you felt were important or wanted to draw out, or just small moments that connected for you?
Yeah. I think I can't help but not think of I always think about heaven in the last
Mm.
scene when he's when they're at the Grey Havens and he's about to
Yeah.
get on the board the ship to go to the west and find some peace. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it just always reminds me about how there's so much evil and bad things in this world, and this isn't it. It's like it gives me
Mm-hmm.
so much hope that, like, no matter what struggles I'm going through or what struggles the world's going through, that there is a perfect place
Yeah.
waiting for us. It's just yeah, it gives me a lot of hope, and it also I think it just deepens my faith every
Mm-hmm.
night. It's just such a nice yeah, it's a nice little reminder that, like, that heaven is there and God is there. And I use, at least for me, and there's a song called Yarendil,
Mm-hmm.
where Arwen and the elves are singing before, like, as the fellowship has just formed and they're about to leave Rivendell. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a moment where I'm kind of like in the front of the stage, kind of like kneeling at
Mm-hmm.
a pew, and it's almost like kneeling at an altar. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, I use that moment as like a little moment of, it's a moment of Frodo getting prepared to go on this journey, but it's also, for me, as like Spencer, I just use it as like a moment of prayer to be like, help me get through this show, help me get through this week, and like,
Yeah.
thank you. Just a moment of, like, I just use it as a moment of gratitude for, like, look, this, it's just amazing that I get to be on the stage doing this thing. It's just
Mm-hmm.
the coolest thing in the world. So I use that
Yeah.
as a little moment of check-in each day. And it's like right halfway through Act One. It feels like it's a nice little
Mm-hmm.
yeah, nice little check-in with God during the show. It's really good.
Mm-hmm. That is awesome.
Yeah.
That was another scene that really stuck out to me because that felt like maybe one of the most distinct ways I think I've ever seen Tolkien's faith integrated into an adaptation of Lord of the Rings,
Oh
but not in
wow.
a way where it was like we're going to heavy hand it or anything. But it just felt like, because my wife and I go to an Anglican church. My wife grew up Catholic, so just
Okay.
that part of the faith I've become fairly familiar with over the last couple years, and so
Yeah.
seeing that scene for a moment, I was just like, oh, I do kind of feel like I'm at church, but not in a like bad way of like, now we're going to preach at you, but just in
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
like, we're all just entering into God's presence together, which, I'm sure everybody on stage has varying interpretations of what's going on there and such. But
Totally.
I felt that was very just lovely. And I was just happy as a Tolkien fan to like see some
Yeah.
of that in there.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that was lovely. And we talked about this a little bit, I think, when we chatted after the show as well. But the way Tolkien writes about heaven when he's writing about the Grey Havens, like
Hmm.
going in, I think I was like, that's just one of my favorite lines when Ian McKellen says it in the movies and whenever I read it in the books. And I was like, I hope this line is in there somewhere about the curtain of the world peeling back and everything turning to silver glass and all of that. They started
Yes.
saying it, and I'm just like bawling. It's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah. Same.
it just, it has like this resonant clarity, I think, to what we were made for more than like the stereotype of like the clouds in the sky and harps and things that I think we often think of.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, gosh. Anyways, that's
Yeah.
another thing I could go off and geek about, but
For
it's just
sure.
beautiful. As you've tackled the role, are there things about him that you feel like have stuck with you? Because I know for me, it feels like characters always work their way into my life somehow in some small ways. Are there things about Frodo that you feel like, either in small ways or in big ways, have stuck with you and impacted you in your life?
Yeah. His willingness to say yes, and his willingness to do anything, like, to protect his friends.
Yeah.
I think, and his family. Like, yeah, he at least in our adaptation, it's like, oh, Gandalf is telling Frodo about how Sauron is going to be searching for the ring and how his search is going to lead him to the Shire, and Frodo is immediately like, well, here, take it away. Like, you have to take it away. And Gandalf's like, I can't. And he said, well, if you can't, I guess I will. And I have to. It's something I have to do. And he's not like, well, what if I die? Or what if, I'm sure he thinks about that, but he's never, he's always like, well, I just have to save those people. It has to be done. Just his willingness to drop anything to help other people. I'm just trying to be more like that, just love harder, love fiercely. I hope I don't have to get attacked by spiders and all that stuff, but
jump into a volcano.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, really like truthfully showing up for your friends. And I feel like the more that I give myself to other people and the more I can help other people, the more that God makes my own life easier without even me trying. But the more when I focus on myself and it's like, well, these are the problems that I have and I really have to solve this. And I don't have time for that because I got my own stuff going on over here is usually when I get more stressed and start to spiral a little bit more. But, when I take a deep breath and slow down and really spend time with other people and help them in any way I can is when life just seems to be more grateful and more God-filled and love-filled. So just trying to spend more time doing that. And Frodo, he reminds me of that every single night. When the journey starts, I always go back to in the books when at the beginning and they're describing like why Frodo is the one that has to take the ring, and Gandalf and Bilbo both agree that they say he's the best of hobbits, which just he encompasses everything, all the good qualities of a hobbit. I try to remind that. It's a lot to put on a person, but I try to strive to do all the things that hobbits do, which is community. The hobbits do community better than any other race in Middle Earth. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, try to be more like that.
Yeah, and I feel like when you do that, because I have that tension too a lot of times, but when you are just operating and I'm going to focus on God and others and love them well and show up in those moments, even when it feels like I can't, God just without fail will give you what you need in that. I feel like I've noticed that for me, and I feel like that's present for Frodo too. Like subtextually, it seems like he always gets what he needs in support from others, or from the circumstances around, or on Mount Doom. God just seems to have set up Middle Earth. God seems to have set up everything just right. So even though Frodo maybe doesn't have the strength to get that final step, he was faithful in everything that God needed him to do to get there. And then God's like, okay, and now I can get it in there from here. He could have done that anyways, but he delighted to use the character. And so.
Exactly. And it doesn't, isn't it one of the Valar who end up pushing Gollum into someone was telling me.
I don't know.
Yeah. There's I forget which, one of the old ancient gods, intervenes and is the one that pushes Gollum into Mount Doom. I need to look it up, but
I need to look that up too.
Someone was telling me in the show. Someone who read the Silmarillion was telling me that. I haven't read the Silmarillion.
Yeah. But, I haven't read all of. I've read the first quarter, and then I keep fizzling out, and then I start over, and then I fizzle out again.
Right.
So I need to look into that.
I don't know if I'll get to it.
Yeah, that's I don't know. Maybe when I'm retired and I have very little time.
Right. Yeah.
I have a whole day. I can read this.
Yeah. Exactly.
Sweet. Well, we have a few minutes left, so I'm going to ask two more questions quick. Cool. One, do you have just a fun favorite memory from doing the show, or a couple where it was just this was a fun thing?
Oh my gosh, so many memories. I think one of my favorite memories was when we were in tech rehearsal, and that show is it's so tech heavy, and anyone who's been in a musical or play knows that tech week, some people call it hell week. It can be, it tests everyone's patience. Everyone's tired. Everyone's hungry. So people can get, testy, and people can, not everyone is super easygoing during tech week, to say the least. So, we were all kind of feeling that, and we were, not nearly as far along as we wanted to be. And we were at the scene in the second act, actually right after Now and For Always, and we had just finished Now and For Always, and the Nazgul projector dragon flies over, and we're supposed to put our elven hoods up. And it was the first time, tech rehearsal, it was the first time we'd had the elven cloaks. And Michael Kurowski, we made this, to go back even further, we made this short series called Gamgee in the Garden. And Sam decides to grow potatoes in the garden at Chicago Shakes. And so there's a couple of episodes on YouTube you can watch. We never finished the series, but we made 2 episodes. Bernadette, who's in the show, she was the producer, and she's amazing. But in the series, he had this thing where he flipped his elven cloak, and he was like, "Elven cloak, go!" And I was like, "Okay, it's gonna be hilarious when the dragon flies over. We're both gonna say, 'Elven cloak, go!'" and make a big swoosh with our cloaks, and everyone's gonna lose their mind, and everyone was kind of tense and on edge, and so we did it. And we went, "Elven cloak, go!" And the cast members on stage started dying laughing, but then there was a big silence. There's a big silence in the audience after that, and the director gets on the God mic and goes, "You're both fired." And we all just kind of lost it, and it was nice.
That's awesome.
And everyone was in such a tense mood that it was just kind of nice to be like, okay, we're doing this ridiculous story about, elves and dwarves and hobbits, and we have to remind ourselves that we're playing. We're playing. So yeah, it was a nice moment of levity in a tense situation.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah.
So one of the things I like to do for the podcast and on our website, for me growing up in a smaller city, wanting to pursue acting and just art in general, I've relied a lot on internet and books and these different things. So I like to build out resources for people. So are there some resources you would recommend for anybody who's interested in either growing in their art, probably particularly theater or performance art, or who want to grow and deepen their faith in Christ?
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, it's funny, you have The Artist's Way right there. It's that's such a great book. In college, that was a big help for me, at least, just daily pages, which I've sort of gotten away from, and I should probably get back on it. That's a really good encourager for any struggling artist, I think, is reading The Artist's Way and doing your daily pages is a really good way to just grow and push yourself as an artist. Yeah, that's about it. When I was in New York, I was in this really great group of faith-based artists who we would meet up and sing and worship together once a week. So I'm missing them. That's at the Big Apple Church in New York. So anyone who is in the city should go check them out. But yeah. Sorry, I wish I had more. I'm drawing a blank.
That's chill. That's all right. That helps. Sweet. Well, thank you so much. This has been lovely. Probably the biggest interview I've done. I'm very excited about it. So,
oh man, thanks.
Thank you so much for being willing to come chat.
Of course, this was great. I'm really grateful that you asked me to do this. This has been great.